You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet. Welcome to the Investor Shed podcast. I'm your host, Nick Beveridge, here with the man of the hour, my co-host, Jeremy Kitchen. Jeremy, how's it going today?
Not too bad. Nick Beveridge, how are you?
I'm doing great. We call you Black Shirt Jeremy Kitchen today. This is great. You usually wear your white shirt. What a day.
Boy, yeah, I know. I'm glad I'm not like a long sleeve blue shirt wearing Nick, though.
That would be embarrassing for you, at least.
Yeah.
Speaking of embarrassing, though, we have a guest who's not embarrassing today. Who is it, Jeremy?
Today we have Justin James. And boy, you're going to love this intro, I think, with Justin. We catch him off guard as soon as he pops into our podcast. We have music going, there's cheering, because this guy's like a local celebrity. And we just wanted him to feel so special, caught him off guard, and we just got right into the podcast. I know Jeremy hated, or Nick hated it, but what do you think?
I thought it was good, being Nick Beveridge, who I am.
Yeah.
Justin provides a lot of value, and he's doing a lot of cool things for being such a young pup. But it's interesting, and he's got a really cool story. So come check it out, grab a bowl of porridge, and let's get into it.
Yo! There you are.
Hey, we're vibing today. Hey,
All
there
right.
he is.
Oh my god.
The man of the hour. Here he is. Everybody, it's Justin Sherfey! Formerly Justin James. Or either or. What do you prefer? Tell the audience who you are.
Justin James live, baby.
Oh, yeah.
You guys have way too much fun. I love this.
So everyone's so happy you're here.
Yeah. All the real people. I love it.
All right, calm down, everyone. Calm down.
Grandma,
Yeah,
stop.
it.
Grandma,
Stop.
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 Stop
Stop
it.
it.
Stop.
Here you are. Justin James, welcome to the podcast.
I had no idea what to expect coming into this, but I didn't know it was like 1, 2, 3 live. Holy crap. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
You know, I'm good. I went to the Moose Lounge last night and played some fiddle with the friends. And then I looked down at my phone when it was over and it was 12:30. So that was a little bit ago.
Right on.
You fiddled hard last night.
You fiddling fool.
Went for it. We went for it.
So tell me, what do you prefer, Justin James or Justin Sherfey? I know I asked you 2 years ago when you were on this podcast before, but I don't know if it's changed.
I mean, Justin, you can remember Justin James. People can't spell my last name. That's why it happened in the first place, because I started playing music and, I played with my buddy. Side note, my buddy who I used to play with just got signed to Sony. So good for him. He's rocking it. But, no one could spell or say my last name and they'd read it. They're like, I don't have a last name like Kitchen or Beveridge, So like Sherfway, Sherfry.
Even Beveridge will throw you for a loop, though. It's the wrong beverage, so you got to be careful with the Nick.
Justin James Sherfey is my full name, but for marketing intents and purposes, Justin James is just fine. And then if I mess up, I'll say I'm Justin Sherfey. It wasn't Justin James.
You could abbreviate it and call it JJ Sure.
JJ Live.
Yeah, JJ Live. I like that too. There you go.
Nice. Well, how have you been? So it's been a couple of years since we've sat down and talked about your business, and I'm just so proud of you. You're just fucking killing it out there. Can you get us caught up to speed for those who want to hear a little bit more about Justin's background? You can check out episode 28, where we sat down when you were kind of a little bit newer into the investing world, but you had already a few still newer, but you had a few deals under your belt back then, and now you're doing a lot. So get us caught up to speed if you don't mind.
Get me caught up. What year was that? Was that 20?
That was 2020. I think it was towards the end of 2020.
Towards the end of 2020. Okay. It's a beautiful thing. Yes. So back then I was doing some wholesale marketing, sending out stuff, tried to slap some deals together. And I think I just had bought my first or second flip by then. And then keep rocking and rolling. The market was absolutely bonkers. And I said, well, why am I wholesaling all these opportunities when I can be, flipping's not that hard, right? One would say. So, yeah, started doing more flips. Picked up a seller finance deal here and there. I hired an acquisitions manager who's still working for me. Got more of my systems and processes dialed in. So all I'm really doing is kind of managing the day to day and going and checking on guys and holding people accountable and just keep swimming, you know, in a nutshell.
I love it. Good stuff. So Justin, yeah, obviously getting you just caught up on a little bit. Tell us about the newer investments that you're working on. Like, what have you been working on lately that's been so cool?
Yes, so I have a couple different projects. So outside of the flips, I have a couple unique projects. So one of them's up in Sandpoint, Idaho, and I bought it as a duplex, and I found out that I could actually make it into two separate townhomes by doing a short plat, whatever. So that's kind of a unique one. You're boosting the value by obviously rehabbing it. It's a huge house. It's the total for the whole duplex is 8 bedrooms, 4 baths, all this stuff. So just a huge value add. It was built in the 90s. We got it at a really, really great deal. Um, but that's one that I'm gonna rent out one side and short-term rental the other side. I have another property exactly like that in Kellogg. That's long-term rental the house, short-term rental the little loft ADU. And so I haven't seen those quite come to fruition. Those are my what I call my two loose ends that I really want to get wrapped up right now. I bet you guys know the feeling.
Yep, for sure.
Nice.
So a couple things like that, yeah.
So how'd you get those deals? Are you still out personally marketing directly to sellers?
Yeah, these are still all off-market deals, and now that there's kind of some deals on market, so that's kind of nice. That's new for me. I've not been around enough to hear about getting a deal on the market, really. They're out there, but now they're easier to come by.
Yeah. Well, that's how I started. I mean, actually the first couple of real good deals I got were, well, the first one I got was off market, but most of the deals when I was getting going were on the market because there was more inventory, there was more to choose from, there was more desperate sellers out there at the time, and they were raising their hand, and some of them were banks. We don't have like the foreclosures that we do right now that we did then, but yeah, market deals are real.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, just a candid example from this last week, a lead came in from a agent actually, and they had some lots for sale for 100. This time last year, if you would have they would have talked to us, we'd be like, hey, we're probably not a fit. But they're like, hey, shoot us an offer. I mean, I don't know if it's my guy or them, but I mean, we'd consider 70, we'd consider 60. It's just like, just like that, complete 180. It's really interesting and surprisingly how quickly that shift has occurred.
You know what I find really cool too? I follow Kid McRoy a lot. And on more than one occasion, if you follow him on YouTube, he'll actually bring up you and your story. Have you ever heard him talk about you?
I've heard him talk about me once, just once. So it's been multiple times.
Yeah, yeah, at least more than once that I'm aware of. But
I better get a royalty.
I'm kind of a nerd and I follow him quite a bit, and
I do too.
yeah.
Speaking of Ken McElroy, can you tell us that interaction story between how you guys first met?
Yeah, so my background, I grew up and I played music and I still do it to this day. I've got to meet some amazing people, Ken being one of them. And my band was hired to play at the Hayden Lake Country Club Hootenanny. This is just such a great story. So I remember, I think it was like 2018, 2019, and I was just getting into real estate. I was listening to audiobooks, and I had a gig that morning up in Cusick or something, and I was listening to the ABCs of Real Estate Investing by Ken McElroy, and not really thinking much of it. And so my band, we set up, we play, we're having a great time, and we take a break, and I tell my guy in the band, I'm like, that guy out there looks really familiar, and I don't know where from. And so I pull up a little audiobook on my phone, and there's a little silhouette headshot in the corner, and I'm like, dude, I think that's that guy. Anyways, we do the next set, and we're playing a song, and Kenny's out there in flip flops, white jeans, and he's like doing this funky dance move. Everyone's like looking at him, and I go out and I take my little earpiece out. I say, hey, what's your name? He's like, Kenny. I'm like, what's your last name? He says, McElroy. I'm like, I was listening to your book on the way to the show tonight. And we just both stopped and we're just like, holy crap. So anyways, and I give him a shout out, and afterwards we talk and connect, and we've been connected ever since. So pretty crazy.
That is a crazy coincidence. That's funny. I don't think I've heard that story.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember that you were listening to the audiobook that day. I just remember you said that you bumped into him at a gig, and then you guys went out and met for coffee and got to talk more about real estate. And I just thought that's a cool second half to the story. It was the prequel I never heard.
Yeah, no, that's the one of the crazier stories. I have one more like that too, and this is just to share the power of getting out there and talking to people. And I was playing on the street corner at the farmers market, which I don't really do anymore, but I will say the farmers market in Coeur d'Alene, if you want to find people who are moving and shaking, sometimes that's the place to go. It's so funny.
Oh yeah, dude, I totally agree. There's a lot of big players around here, and they're just quiet about it.
They're quiet about it. So I was playing on the street corner probably 2 summers ago. No, yeah, summer 2020. And this guy was just digging what I was doing. And he had his phone out, you know, 55, 65 years old. And he comes out to me, Justin, hey, Justin, how the heck are you? My name is Ron Osborne, and I want to fly you down to my house. That's exactly how he sounds too. And I'm like, and it was summer 2020, like gigs were a little few and far between. And I said, yeah, I don't got a lot going on. Sure, I'll come down to your house. Um, and so he flies me down to Boise. I come and play for their company party, then a party for their church. And I'm starting to put things together. And he's like, "Here, do you want a copy of my son's book?" And I'm like, because I start telling him about real estate, and he picks me up from the airport, and we drive through his storage units. And I'm starting to put it all together. I'm like, "Holy crap! This is Key Lock Storage. This is AJ Osborne. This is those guys." And then I was like, holy crap, this is them. And so it just the power of putting yourself in situations where doors can open and you can have those type of conversations with people is immensely valuable. And my little music side hobby that I thought was never gonna pay dividends, you know, does.
It got you in the room with a lot of important people, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
I mean, you got really, really good at one thing that most people aren't really that good at, and you kept going at it, and you drew attention. You know, you offered value to people in more ways than one. You know, you entertain them, and you're in the right spot. You know, so what'd you think was going to happen, man?
Not that.
Yeah, yeah.
I do want to touch a little bit about you being a musician, Justin. So obviously, a lot of your background is in a musician field. What got you into real estate investing in the first place?
It's the family disease, Jeremy.
Yeah.
It's oh God. Yeah, it totally is. My dad's dad, my dad, yeah, all of my grandparents at some point in time were in real estate. We're on a podcast, but I don't care. I'll say it. My dad's dad, my grandpa, he used to have some really good tactics for getting people out of houses, but he said, Justin, just remember as you get into this that the only good tenant's a dead tenant. Oh my God.
Oh, well, do they pay rent, or why did he say that?
Well, he got out of landlording, so we'll just say that it wasn't quite a fit. And I remember my dad told me a story one time. Um, my grandpa had a bone arrow with like a letter on it, like telling these people to get out. And he fired it out of his truck window onto the front door of his rental house.
That's one way to serve an eviction notice.
Yeah, that's one way to. Yeah, you've been served.
So I'm guessing he didn't enjoy being a landlord, and he probably just couldn't find a good property manager.
Yeah, probably a little bit of a slumlord, so he got out of it. But all that to say, he got my dad into building when he was like 18, and they built a couple houses together. You know, when you're first starting out, you need you can't just go walk up to the bank, as you guys know, and say, "Hey, I'm going to build a house,"
I wish.
right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So my dad's been doing that forever. He survived the last Great Recession. Um, and then my mom went to school to be a teacher, and she actually ended up being a real estate agent. And so they've been doing that forever. And I owe a ton of my success to, you know, being able to call my mom as I got two offers last night on a flip, and she's like, "Tell me the details," and then playing the chess game, and so that's definitely how I got into it. I will say, I remember back in 2009, 2010, I said, "I'm never getting into real estate. This is terrible."
Well, how old were you back then?
Like 12,
Okay.
12 to 14. I'm like, this sucks. This.
Well, I first got into real estate back in 2008, and yes, it did suck. So, timing is everything sometimes.
That's crazy. So, like, obviously, like, when you're 12 years old, I mean, you have a ideal in your head that, like, man, real estate sucks. Like, I had no intention of ever touching a house, even until almost my 30s, right? So, like, it's crazy your upbringing, and it's cool that you had this support system to kind of show you the ropes for sure. So,
Yeah, I am forever grateful. Yeah, they are awesome. So,
Now, how are your parents pretty proud of you? I would imagine.
yeah, no, they definitely are. They question some of my choices sometimes. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes they're right. But yeah, no, they're very they're proud. Yes. For now.
what kind of choices are you making that make them not proud, by the way?
I bought a really just stupid property this time last year. Never should have bought it. And they're like, "That is the dumbest thing you've ever done." And I'm like, "You're right." It was just after I hired Will, my acquisitions manager, and he teed up this deal, and it was just like it was a non-conforming house in a light industrial neighborhood that couldn't get regular financing, and it's just like my bad of due diligence not doing my part, and me being new, having him around, feeling obligated to, this guy just got a deal, I should probably perform on this, but at the end of the day, all my liability. So like that was a choice that, you know glad I got out of that.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and in my opinion, I don't think you really learn anything until you make mistakes. So, I don't know if that, like, if you regret making that decision or if you just learn from it. But I know anytime I've had successes in real estate, I didn't learn a damn thing. But I've done plenty of mistakes, and that's where I learn stuff.
Definitely, I've learned a lot this year. Let's say that.
Same here.
Can we talk about what you've learned a little bit? So obviously, we want to kind of dive into what has worked for you and what hasn't worked. So going forward with the market, what have you learned that has been working and hasn't worked?
Yeah, so I'll start on the very front end, because what I learned, what I started doing out of the gate was marketing. Um, I learned that the guys I was using and the guys that were running my SEO and PPC was just a giant waste of money. And I know that these other channels work for me, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm going to go after this new sexy thing, this SEO, these smoking hot leads that just appear on your phone." So what I learned this year is, when stuff's working, you don't really pay as much attention, and then you come back to it, and then you say, "Holy crap, I've spent $20,000 on a lead channel that's done nothing." And you're like, "Oh crap," you know. So that's like part one of the lesson as I'm looking back on this year, is like, hey, if it's working, you still need to track it, because it's so easy to just get into autopilot. Um, on the property side of things, I've just learned a lot about managing people better. Like the other day, just like a rookie mistake, I had a rental in Spokane, and I had my guy go out basically to do a honeydew list, and just not establishing the price beforehand. Like, duh. Like he's like, "Oh," and then it comes the end of the day, and he's like, "Yeah, my day rate's 700." I'm just like, "No, it's not. Your day rate is not $90 an hour to move a fridge." I mean, so like stuff like that I've learned, and it's a little bit tricky being like I'm 24 now. Everyone who works with me is older, but I've gotten a lot better at having those conversations, but just keeping people in line and not getting taken advantage of.
Sure.
Yeah, communication's like one of the most challenging parts of this business, and it's like the most important part of this business. But the more communication, the better. Like you can never over communicate when in real estate, especially with projects and transactions and all that stuff. But yeah, good point.
That's awesome. And I do want to talk a little bit about Ron and AJ Osborne, actually, because according to social media, you just bought your own storage unit. Is that correct?
This time social media is not lying.
No, no, no. Okay. Okay. Tell us about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we were kind of Will and I, we were kind of going throughout the year, and I just pulled a list of commercial data. I'm like, hey, I just want to give this a go. Um, and so we marketed to it, cold call it, texted it, and this lead came in, and it was 50 storage units, 6 apartments, and 1 commercial space. It's out in Spokane Valley. And at first I'm like, huh, okay, okay. And then the guy who works for me, Will, he could come on here and talk your ear off. He's an acquisitions guy. Just talk, 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 talk. And he yeah. And he went out and looked at it. I don't really look at it until it's worthwhile to look at. And he got it under contract for like less than assessed value. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna see if this is actually a deal. And yeah, I put my first storage, yeah, put it under contract, and it's just been trial by fire. The closing did not work. That's something I learned. Um, Big lesson this year. I remember clearly um, we had like a 90-day close because I had a partner that was gonna partner with me, and I had First Interstate Bank who was gonna be the lender on it. They had the commercial space renting for five. Well, actually, it was zero. They were giving the commercial space away for free. They had the 6 apartments renting on, let's just say, an average of $400 a unit for studios to 2 bedrooms. And then the storage units were anywhere from $30 to $80. And the bank's like, I remember I was at the Hagedon Event Center playing a wedding. I hate playing weddings, but like I was setting up for the ceremony, all this stuff. I'm on the phone with the banker. She's like, "We got the appraisal back, and you got it at a really good price. You got it $100,000 lower than what it appraised at, but you just don't meet the minimum debt service coverage ratio with the current rents." And I'm like, well, shit.
Yeah, like how do you get rents up without owning the property so you can actually get it?
And real quick, before you go into depth with that, can you explain debt service coverage ratio to those who don't know what you're talking about?
Yes. So, I mean, I'll try. My basic example is if you have a payment of $1,000 a month, the bank has a debt service coverage ratio. In this case, it was 1.25 because this asset was riskier because it's mixed use, old, la la la. So they want to see you bringing in 1,250 a month. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Thank you.
Yeah. So that was stressful. So then I called up the seller. I said, "Hey, Mr. Seller, our bank financing, with the current rents that are in place, they can't finance it. Um, I put $20,000 earnest money down, and I paid for a $8,000 appraisal. And
Oh yeah, commercial appraisals are not cheap.
no, good grief. So I said, "Give me 2 weeks. I'll figure this out." And they were flexible. They're like, "Hey, we get it. Okay, all right, buddy, get to work." So, um, long story short, I had my original partner, and I'm like, "Hey, do you want to fund this whole thing?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think I can maybe do that." And I'm like, "All right, all right." And so I was waiting for like a hard commitment from him, and then he backed out. And then I called up the Antles, and they they're like, "Oh yeah, send us the appraisal." They saw the appraisal. They're like, "Oh, of course we'll fund this thing."
That's awesome. So the $8,000 was not a waste of money.
Well, actually, no. I didn't think about it like that. No, it wasn't a waste of money. And then I'm hoping to in the spring um, refinance, and instead of doing a whole new appraisal, they will amend the current appraisal, and we'll go based off of that value.
Awesome. So is your plan basically to just increase rents in the storage units and the studios and apartments then?
Yes. Yeah. So um, at the time, and so this is actually a question I asked Ken McElroy, because I was right in the middle of this, and we get together during the summer. I'm like, what do I do? And we tried to make a content video about it. We got together at the Innovation Den, and he's like, yes, all right, I've been there. Let's make a video on it. And so he's like, so what you do is what they've done is they've hired like leasing companies to come in and basically get everything leased up. If they're buying an apartment complex at 75% vacancy, or rents are extremely low, like during their closing window, they'll have a company come in and raise those and manage those and get them to meet that minimum. That's one way to go about it. Um, but I was not able to do that. So I just had to get a private money lender. But basically, I took the commercial space and took that rent from, it was at the time of closing, it was 500, which is still kind of a joke. And starting on January 1, that will be at 1300. The apartments, there's 6 units. They were roughly three, the studios were at like 325. Those went to 745. The one bedrooms were like, say, 400. Those went to 1,000. And then the two bedrooms went from 550 to like 1,300. So
Nice.
in Washington, you really got to know your stuff, because you have to do proper notice. You have to serve documents on time for rent raises. So, and it's like a 3 month process. So the second we closed, I did not want to do the property management on this, because I genuinely don't know everything, and I didn't want to screw it up. And so we sent out notice of rent increase, walked the units, talked to the people, said, hey, and this is a really good way to frame it too. It's like, the lady, she walked through, and she's awesome at reading people. And they walked through, she's like, hey, you've gotten a really good deal for, a long time. And, that's one way to put it, instead of, hey, rent's going to market. It's like, hey, you've gotten a really good deal for a long time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a way to scare people off.
Yeah. So interesting fact though is we took those rents, sent out notice of rent increase. Half the people left, but I made more every month with it half full. So, and that's a concept that AJ Osborne talks about a lot, is economic vacancy versus physical vacancy, you know.
That's a big complicated deal. So how long were you in escrow? And and also could you tell us why the seller was selling at such a discount?
Yes. So I think we had a 90-day close, and part of that was the bank. Appraisals in the early summer, spring, were taking 45 days to get back, and then the bank does their initial underwriting, appraisal, and then final underwriting. So we had like a 90-day close, which our commercial is pretty understandable. Um, and this seller was selling. They were very mom and pop. It was kind of a family ordeal, and the grandpa, the old man, great people, who was managing it, was having some health stuff come up, and they're like, hey, we need to get rid of this thing. We need to sell it. So, and it's another thing that goes back to right opportunity, right time, but always, whether it's marketing or just going and meeting people.
What did you end up buying that for, by the way?
We bought it for uh simple terms, we bought it for 700,000.
Okay. And then with your rent increase and everything like that, what's your mortgage on the property and what are you bringing in on it? Just rough estimate.
Yeah, so right now it's a little unique, because at the time, if I would have gotten a mortgage on that 700,000, I wouldn't have, the cash flow from the property wouldn't have paid for it. So I put I got the full amount funded, and then I had a interest reserve,
Okay.
which an interest reserve is basically a note that services the underlying note. So I have a 6 month interest reserve, which is going to be coming up in the spring, and to 6 months is up, pay the full amount. But by then, I should. The biggest thing right now is getting these storage units leased up, which I'm learning right now. But yeah, but I should be able to pay that. But right now, my payment's only like $800 a month because I'm paying the interest reserve, which is paying the underlying debt.
Sure. Okay.
So, just out of curiosity, is this something where you need an employee on site to lease out these storage units and constantly keep the ground clear and all that stuff?
Yes and no. So there's not anyone on site. It's unmanned, which is not uncommon with a space this size. A lot of it is online. So I spent, $4,000 on a website and a property management software that all talk to each other, and eventually will talk to the gate. And so all I would, need to really pay for, I pay for snow removal, um, and then it'll probably be someone who's really just part-time, like going and checking on it, maybe sweeping out a space here and then. But at this point in time, I don't mind, as I'm learning, being out there, being on site, sweeping out the units. Like, is that the highest and best use of my time? No. And am I learning a lot from that? No. But I'm there, I'm on site, and I am learning just by being in it, seeing how these things are built and talking to people, all that stuff.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, sometimes with a project like this, I believe you really have to kind of be there on site to get a firm grip of the reality of the situation, but you don't need to be there long term. You can always put the processes, people, and systems in place to run itself. But I think it is really important to kind of be there and know how everything functions. That way you can train people. But were there things that you ran into that you didn't anticipate, like expenses such as like snow removal, or were a lot of those things just already accounted for?
No, not at all. So with what I had going on, three of the units, like the apartment units, three of those people moved out, and then one of them was trashed, and I really didn't expect to have to do anything. And then my new this is my joke for this year. It's my new like Christmas song. It's like 15 grand there, 5 grand there, you get 10, you get 20, everybody but me gets money. So
Welcome to my world. Yeah, I know
yeah,
that song.
right. Maybe I'll add some verses to it. But 2022 was quite the year. Yeah, yeah, yo. But yeah, like flipping a unit like that. Like, you get the money for the deal, and then, you have money in the bank at the time, and then you're like, oh crap, this unit should be turned. It's pretty trashed.
Mm-hmm.
It'll pay off in the long run, but right now it's like, man, I didn't really have just a huge slush fund ready for, you know, capital reserves right out of the gate, as you
Yeah.
ran into that never enough. Um, and then, I mean, there's not a whole lot of maintenance on the storage side yet, but trying to get guys to come out and replace a gate, it's taken me forever.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
It's not broken, but it's just not running like I want the gate, I want to be completely unmanned. I want the gate to talk to the
Sure.
website to talk to property management. That way you can eliminate a lot of what would be people or time.
Yeah. So, if you could elaborate just a little bit more on like your total time and capital invested so far. I know you said you got, essentially you got the deal zero down because you got such a great deal. You're able to get it all funded, but I know, being in that position, you're not really zeroed down. You probably got a lot of your own personal money into just acquiring the deal yourself. I mean, you're paying somebody just to get it under contract, and then you also have all the ongoing maintenance and all that stuff before things are turned. Do you have a rough idea how much money you think you'll put into this thing, you personally, and then once it's all operational, what it might cash flow?
Yeah, so I do these numbers when I'm, wanting to feel good about the future, right? So like, um, so my closing costs, yeah, it's so funny because people say, "Oh, get into real estate zero down." I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, hardly ever.
Yeah, even with the second note, it's like, I get the call from the closing company. Okay, I have a cashier's check for 43,000 at closing. It's like, good Lord.
Yeah.
And so I'll have that into it. I have roughly, I had to, the other thing you didn't really think of is like new signage. I don't know a sign company, rebrand, new website. So that was probably another 7,500. And then like I said, I got like 15,000 into that one unit. Um, so, and there's still a couple more things I need to get done. I've just been delaying it because it hasn't been necessary. Like I want the commercial space is pretty rough, and the bank on the initial appraisal said there's $100,000 worth of capital expenses that also deducted from the future value. So at the end of the day, I'm probably going to be into it quite close to 75,000. And not all of that is my money. Like I've told people about this deal, and I'm like, hey, do you want to get in on this? Because I'm just I'm not made of money. It runs out. So
Yeah. Yeah. You'll go broke really quickly if you just try to fund everything yourself in this business, trying to do what you do.
and that was another lesson I learned this year on a flipping Kellogg. Because in the spring, I made some pretty good money. I invested some in crypto. My dad hates that, and then near the end of the flipping, it was in Wallace. I'm like, oh, I can fund that. Near the end, like my bank account's down to like 10 grand, and we have operating expenses. You're like, oh shoot,
That's bad.
um, not doing that again. But anyways, I'll run you through the numbers. So roughly, I'll be into 75. Um, I do this a lot. So the commercial space is going to bring in $1,300 a month. The apartments should bring in around 5,000, and the storage units will bring in roughly 5,000. So that's 11 a month gross. So times that by 12 months in a year. This is how I go about the math. So that's 135 a year before taxes, before insurance, before um, all that stuff. And so when I subtract all that out, because I've done it a million times now, that's roughly $35,000 a year, um, give or take. So that number of your NOI is roughly 100. I'm doing this on my phone because I can't do it in my head.
That's fine.
And when they assessed it at the time, they had a cap rate of a 6.5, or it might have been 6. So, but I've been penciling in a 7 cap. Cap rates have gone up, which decreases your value because the cost of debt has come up. But when I divide that by a 7 cap, my valuation comes in at 1.43 million. And so I'll just say 1.4, but and then the bank will give me 75. We'll see, 70, 75, loan to value, and that will support, the debt. I mean, the interest rate's gone up.
Perfect.
What do you guys want to use? Do you want to use 0.75 or 0.7?
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's going to be up to the bank initially.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're going to do the burst strategy and you're going to make out, you should be able to pull extra cash out from what you're saying. It sounds like, right?
Yeah, so that's the play. So I'm gonna have roughly like a loan for a million 50, and my all-in costs are gonna be, um, yeah, 775.
Yeah. So once you get that loan, depending on what interest rates are at that time, do you how much after paying the debt service do you plan on actually bringing home every month? Do you kind of have a rough idea?
Yeah, it's around like the 3,000 mark.
Okay, great. So this one deal, I mean, it's like replacing a job almost.
Ask me after it closes, because I'm all hypothetical right now,
Okay, sure.
but that should, like, I ran the numbers, but like I said, you don't know until you know. You don't know you don't know what debt, how much debt they're gonna give you. You don't know.
We'll have to have you on in another year to kind of talk about that deal a little bit more and see how it actually penciled out for you.
Yeah.
But that's the amazing thing about doing a big complicated deal like this. It's just one deal, and the amount of cash flow that you should conservatively produce is almost as much as having like 10 single family rentals, but you only did one transaction. It's just a little bit tougher, took more time, more effort.
Yep, like I was there last night. Didn't want to be there. I was in Kellogg in the morning and then went over to the storage units at night because the person called, "Hey, we're locked in." And this is part of me trying to get the gate like redone, and this happens. And so I go in there, tap the computer, take out the little part, reset it. My hands are half frozen, but we made it happen.
Gotcha. So you need to find a guy on the ground eventually.
Yes, but I need to learn. I need to know how to do it first. So
Yep, good point.
You got to be able to train your systems. That's for sure.
yeah.
I do want to circle back a little bit, Justin, just to your social media. Just recently, I've seen you start popping up on TikTok, a couple other places. Can you tell us about social media and what that plan is going forward for you?
Yes. So I joined a mastermind this year, and it's Ryan Pineda's mastermind actually, and he's just huge on social media, and like social media is currency, like eyeballs are money, and I completely agree with that. And I also, there's part of me that just says, hey, if I document this a little bit, I'm not going to regret it, no matter if it goes anywhere or nowhere.
Hmm.
And I believe that, from me being a musician and working on stage, it's like I could rock this stuff. I think it'd be so fun to have a big old event like the Osbournes do every year in Coeur d'Alene, you know, and but you have to grow a following to be able to do that. And it's so funny because I was at the bar last night playing music, and the lead guitar player is like, "Hey man, I've been watching your YouTube videos." And I go over and talk to this other girl, and she's like, "Hey, I've been seeing your stuff," and I'm just like, and I haven't been doing it that long, but it's like people who you don't think see it, they're seeing it.
Hmm.
And my why behind it is to want to share what I'm doing. It'll open more doors. I can only be in so many places at once, but if I'm on your phone.
Hmm.
I think it's like the best form of marketing you can do because you're getting eyeballs and you're offering value. You're like teaching people what you're doing. They're getting inspired, and it's not just this like crappy ad that they're hearing on the radio again and again and again. You're actually offering value to somebody, and you're getting attention from it, and it will have residual effects long term in the future. Like I remember, I took a year off from doing this podcast, not intentionally. I just got busy and I kind of almost forgot about it. But over the year that I didn't do it, I would have people talk to me about, hey, I heard this podcast and it was really awesome and I'm like, oh, really? People are still listening to that thing I did? Like, I got to start it up again because it's like, it's just another form of marketing and it's out there forever and it's free. And it's very effective. And that's just what young people are tuning into these days.
So true. And the powerful thing about podcasts and stuff like this is with social media, you could repurpose this content too.
Yep.
It's awesome. And I'm going to start getting into that a little more as well, instead of just the straight up, here's how my 3 steps to being 24 and dumb,
Yeah.
But that stuff works for you, right? Like I watch your stuff; it's really well done. Your audio sounds good. Your video looks good. It looks like you know what you're doing. Are you following these from your mastermind? Is this something your mastermind is teaching you as well?
They were just big on, hey, start doing social media. And I have a buddy, I've met a ton of people here in Coeur d'Alene who are all doing awesome, they're out there doing stuff, getting it done. And I just have a friend who basically comes over every once a week, and he's great at video, he's great at audio, he's great at editing, and that's how it happened. But we're playing with stuff right now, original audio versus trending sounds, um, stuff like that. So
It's interesting too because I'm kind of in that field as well. But you wanna definitely hit all the marks. Like there's 80% informative, 10% trending, 10% selling, right? So you want to try to get that balance of everything. Give people a reason to follow you, provide the value, and then give them a reason to stay there and actually work with you.
yeah, I mean, it's so powerful too. And I'm like, man, if I just could do this for like 2 years
Hmm.
and just see where it goes, I think it'll be good. And it's funny because your follower count kind of goes like this, because when you first start out, people forget they follow you, and so it grows, and then you lose people because they don't want to hear what you have to say, and then it grows a little bit, and then more people see you, they're like, I don't want to, I follow you for you, not for this. And so it's just a slow.
Kind of like real estate, kind of goes up in little waves and kind of keeps going. So
Yeah.
going forward a little bit though, Justin. So what's your plan for your next 5 years? Are you going to continue more in the commercial space? Are you looking more at residential? Like, where do you think you're going to be going in the next 5 years?
Yeah, great question. So outside of the storage deal, another larger deal I'm doing is I'm doing my first development in Spokane with a partner, and I'm basically kind of just along for the ride. I brought the deal to him, and I'm thankfully, part of the operating agreement. I get to sit in on the meetings with the architects, with the civil engineers, with the city, all that stuff. Um, and I've just through that, I've learned a ton, so much. Development is kind of crazy. All that to be said, the model was build to sell, and I don't want to be in the build to sell, the speculatory game, hopefully in 5 years. But the hardest thing is you have to have some sort of active income to fuel the fire. And it kind of, unless you have a big portfolio, it's like, this is a little tricky, as you guys probably speak to a little bit.
Yeah, no, I got into that game a couple of years ago, and it was awesome the first year because I was having an issue with just trying to find good flip deals because the market was getting so hot, there wasn't enough inventory. Everybody's fighting over kind of really marginal flips, and not many people are building spec homes, and there was only a few lots left to kind of go after. And the first year I did it, it was really awesome. And we were able to stay on budget with things. And it was unlike a flip, but very, very close to just like flipping homes. Only there's a few extra steps in the beginning. Um, and then the second year, it was insanely horrible and complicated and very, there were so many, because of COVID and supply chain issues and labor issues and inflation, we got locked into all these deals and locked into budgets. And then all of a sudden our construction costs got out of control, like almost doubled on a lot of our line items. And thankfully the prices were going up, but then we couldn't get anything done on time because we were so short on trying to get like the right materials, and everybody was waiting for trusses. Everybody was waiting for many months for windows, all these random things that just slowed production down. And then you're just getting eaten away by holding cost. While you have other properties that are waiting on permits, and the permitting office and engineers are way behind. So everything just took like 9 months longer than it should and almost doubled in cost. And then the market started turning. So we were like way over leveraged to begin with. And then all this, and we spent almost double on some of these projects than what we are anticipating on a lot of items, not double the actual construction cost, but at least 25% more. And then the market turned, and our holding costs too. We spent 100% more than what we were planning on. And it's been a horrible ride down trying to offload these off our books. And we're not the only builders going through this.
No, not at all.
I really wish you the best, and I'm sincere with that you're getting into this. Just make sure that you don't get any big loans until you have permits. That was the biggest thing I learned.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. It's yeah, I don't this development, it's fine because nothing's been finalized yet. We're going to get our plans done. We're going to get it permitted, and then we're going to, assess the state of the world. We're going to be like, "Hey, does this make sense to build right now?" And thankfully the partner that I'm partnered with, sure, let's wait a year. That's a good investment for my cash. I'm just going to let that piece of land sit there. I'm going to let that costly architect, yeah, let's just sit and let's wait. We're not in a rush. We don't have any lenders to pay. He is the bank. So that's where my margin of stupidity, I'm like, hey, that's okay. But yeah, that's exactly why I didn't want to get into real estate. It's because of when you get caught like that, I'm just like, oh my gosh. But long term, I do just want to hold, if I can, keep my personal expenses really low, have these rentals, these Airbnb supporting what I have going on, and slowly try to just hold and accumulate. And I just don't want to do the build to sell spec. So can you talk a little bit more about that, Nick? Because I'm kind of curious too. Like,
Yeah, totally. It was I made a few mistakes. The biggest thing was I didn't really get into business with anyone that's done it before on a big scale. It was kind of newer with everybody I brought on board. And then I hired people thinking that they can do what I do, and have the same motivation that I do. And And I found out, not unfortunately, it wasn't very quickly, but I found out over the course of about a year, some of the people I hired, they didn't care if things took too long. They didn't care to try to get good deals or shop contractors. Um, they didn't care to manage the books like I thought they were going to. There's all these things that I couldn't blame anybody but myself ultimately for just not having. I should have dipped my toes in and instead of just jumped in a pool of a pool that I've never jumped into before. I didn't know how deep it was. I didn't know what the temperature was.
Yeah. So did you start off just like full send, like 5 at a time, or did you start with one, or were you like, or what did that look like?
I started with one in, I think it was like late, it was somewhere around 2019. I did it with my brother, and it was when we were struggling trying to find good flips, and we did our first build, and it went really well, and we were really kind of pleased with just dealing. We never dealt with so many subs before, but we were so pleased to have all these people do all the work for us and stay on budget, and there was really no surprises, and they got things done so quickly. Like I remember we built this 1,500 square foot home, and like the drywall company that we hired, they came in and they were done in like 3 days, when normally it would take us like a month to like do the drywall process ourselves on a flip.
Everything's straight and level for the most part on a new build, right?
Yeah, and everything's straight and level, and we were able to sell it pretty quickly. And then I got into a partnership with some other people that were not really, they weren't really set up to build at scale, but they had some experience building, and we got over leveraged, and they took on too much. We took on too much.
How many did you have going?
I had 10 with them, and then I went in, and then I got into another 7 or so with myself and some other people in Kootenai County. So there are about 16, 17 or so new construction homes over the course of a couple of years that on top of also doing some, traditional burrs and a couple of fix and flips. But I basically went from being a real estate agent investor to running a construction company. And it was not, it wasn't my strength. I learned after about a year that it wasn't what I was meant to do. And it was starting to have a bad effect on everything that I built up over the last decade of these other solid businesses that I was basically almost abandoning, not on purpose, but just because of how time demanding it was to run a construction company, even though I had people running it. But you still had to there's so much attention you had to give it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my experience, and I'm not fully getting out of it. I'm just scaling it way down.
Yeah. So out of those 17, like how many were you able to sell? And then how, I mean, when did you guys notice the shift basically? And then say, well, because new build starts at an all-time low right now, which long term.
So we were able to sell 6 of them. We were able to refinance one and keep it as a long-term Airbnb. One of them I kept as another Airbnb here in town. And we still have 4 more properties up north that are within the last couple of weeks from being finished. One of them sitting on the market. I've got another one here in Coeur d'Alene that I just dropped the price by $100,000. It's been sitting on the market since last summer. And it was, at the time, it was like the cheapest house in Coeur d'Alene for new construction of that size. And now it's definitely the cheapest. But I've had a lot of interest on it, and I still have a few more to wrap up.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get to a point, I had interest reserves on everything, and I was over leveraged, and guess what? All the interest reserves dried up, and all of a sudden I had to be the one making $50,000 a month in interest payments and paying all these employees another 30 grand a week every other week. And it got to a point where I was just, I ran out of all my cash reserves. I ran up all my credit cards, and I had to go sell off a rental, the one paid off rental I had, to help kind of get caught up on some things. That money went away within weeks. And unfortunately, I'm still not out of the woods. It definitely took a huge hit to my, it's going to wipe out at least, 40-50% of my net worth, but I've learned so much from it. And I know I can build a house way better, more efficiently now than ever before with less people. So I've learned a lot from it. It was like a huge education. And I've definitely had a stressed out year, but I've grown a lot from it. And I'm excited. I think the future looks bright, but it's a long, drawn out story. And I'll tell you more when I'm done.
Well, no, I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part that people don't talk about. It's like, hey, what's really going on? Because I was asked the other day by a family friend, hey, how's business? I'm like, it's business, man. It's not like, oh, it's great, it's good.
It's a thing.
It's not easy. Yeah.
No, it's not easy. But the question he asked me, and he's a very successful businessman. He's like, buddy, are you stuck? I'm like, no, I'm not stuck. At the end of the day, no, I'm not stuck. I have built up, I haven't been doing this forever, but I've built up assets, and I have a plan moving forward. And if you can have, a little bit behind you to build, like you said, a rental. I had this talk. It's like, well, hey, am I going to have to sell off my rental? It's like, no. Do I have a plan moving forward to kind of dig myself out of a little bit of the cash crunch hole that I'm currently in? It's like the money's there. It's supposed to come. It will. Hopefully, 2023.
Right? It's going to be a good year.
It will be a good year. That's the thing. People will make money next year. Like, there is money to be made. So and I don't mean to turn the host around, but I want to ask you guys too, like, where do you see next year? I mean, we're wrapping up 2022, and for a lot of people, it's been a great year. And for a lot of people who are in the weeds of this business, this last half of this year has sucked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where do you guys see?
I'll let Jeremy go first.
I see a couple things happening. As far as the housing market, I see that kind of relatively stabilizing, if not going up just a little bit than it is right now. But I also see a lot more opportunity going to be hitting the market. People that are over leveraged that we can take on seller financing or subject to. Creative financing, I think, is going to be the way of the future in 2023. Just with people getting in these last few years, getting into the $500,000 house when they can't really afford it. That's going to be a lot of room for us to come in and help them and help ourselves. I also see just, continued learning, continued education, and trying to make good deals and trying to analyze as good as I can.
So that tells me you're the outlook is bleak for you then.
It's
for prices and for people trying to sell. You're saying all the positives out of that, but read between the lines.
I think the outlook is still good, but it depends on who's on what side too, right? So I mean, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for investors. You might have to pay a little bit more for those opportunities, but if your plan is to buy and hold or Airbnb, like those plans are going to work out in your benefit. I don't see flipping as a viable strategy really going forward unless you can get a really good deal.
Yeah. And I got started in 2008. That was my first investment home that I bought, that I moved into with the purpose of moving out of it and renting it. So I got to see what a real dark market looks like, and we're not in that. I feel like, the people that are in real estate and that have been in real estate for the last few years, they have no idea how good this market still is.
That's me. I've only seen this.
Yeah. You don't know what a bad market is. I remember I bought a house in 2008 in Kellogg, just before the mines shut down and just before the economy really started crashing. I remember I fixed up that house. I put my life savings for a year and a half. Everything that I made, I put into that house, fixed it up, went to rent it out, and it wouldn't rent for almost a year. And then a year after that, it eventually sold as an REO. I gave it back as a deed in lieu, sold for 26 grand. So that, I mean, that's some serious deflation. And I bought that house for 86, put 15 into it, made it very nice and livable, and it didn't matter. And I started selling real estate full time as an agent in 2011 in the hardest hit county, the second hardest hit county in the country, Osceola County in Florida. And all I was showing was bank owned properties and short sales, and those were the only listings out there. Hardly anybody had equity. And that, but at that time, I was still able to make things happen. There were still people buying and selling homes. The reality is that back then there was a lot of inventory, and it's still all about supply and demand. There's a lot of demand these days still. There's just a little bit more supply. I mean, for like a couple of years, we had such little inventory on the shelves of the virtual real estate shelves. Like if you picture going into a grocery store and, out of every aisle, there's like 8 shelves on both sides of you. Just picture like only the bottom 2 shelves have food on them. And that's the way it's been this whole, for the last couple of years. What happened over the last year was that one side of the aisle now has food on it. We still have like a seller's market. You can still, there's still plenty of demand for the food. And the shelves are only half full. So this is not a dark market. A dark market is when you walk into the grocery store and you can't even walk in because it's flooding with food and people can't get rid of it and it's spoiling and, that's not, there's still a very healthy consumption rate of the inventory here. It's just gotten a lot more affordable for your everyday person. What I think is going to happen next year, I don't know. I just know that I'm going to be in real estate and I'm going to make it work.
Justin, what's your opinion, by the way, next year? Before we start and get to our final questions, what's your thoughts on next year?
Just like Nick, I don't know. I have no idea. I got lunch with um, a very seasoned investor who has crushed it and has lost it all and who's crushed it again. And he said, yeah, I was, flipping, back, at a different market when this was happening. And he's like, yeah, and I was getting what I thought were crazy good deals. I got them at 50% of ARV. But the market started dumping so incredibly hard that it then went down 25% more. And so your margin's just gone. So part of me is optimistic. I have 2 theses for next year. One is that we might have found the bottom, which I don't think we have yet, but I think the bottom could be in, Q1, Q2 of next year, just based off of contingency rate, based off of, just looking at the factual numbers of what is going on in the market, days on, all that stuff. I think that the bottom could be relatively close. Just gonna keep watching that, but I don't see another huge black swan happening. I mean, they just passed another $2.7 trillion, so that's inflationary again. And I think the outlook could be that we haven't even really started to find the bottom yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a huge reason why I say I don't know, is because you can look at all the data and you can say without a doubt the market should turn around next year by Q2. But the government controls our economy. And the Fed controls they have a lot of influence to manipulate what actually happens. So who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone out there looking at deals, it's like really analyze your comps because stuff is still selling. Like even right now, I've had a flip on the market for like 6 weeks, and I'm like, we are the best price product. We are the best. We are the best. And then last night at like 8 p.m., we had 2 offers come in. I'm like, I was expecting to get nothing until after the new year. It's just, You just don't know. But pricing yourself right and looking at the numbers as best you can, within your market and seeing what's going contingent in your price range, how many days on market, all that stuff plays a big part to be able to feel good. But at the end of the day, yeah, we are in a controlled economic environment right now.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Justin, we're hitting about just over the hour mark right now, so we're going to start winding down. This has been a really great episode, by the way. Thank you so much for coming on. But we do have a couple final questions for you just to kind of wrap up the show. So the first one is, if you had a business or investing book that you recommend every single person read, what would that be?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a huge reader. I'm gonna tilt the question if that's okay. And if you want a book, I'll give you a book. But I listen to a ton of podcasts and a ton of YouTube. So I listen to Ken McElroy also like every week, Nick. I listen to him a ton. I listen to the AJ Osborne. He has two podcasts. He has a personal one and a storage one. They're both fantastic. And so those are two that I would recommend. And they both have books. So go read their books if you're a book reader.
Podcasts are just as good as well. So,
Dude, I feel like podcasts are like the television series as compared to movies. Like books are like these movies. This one time, here's an hour and a half message. But sometimes TV shows are pretty good. And that's like an ongoing podcast.
yeah, absolutely. The next question is, if you had $30 million gifted to your bank account, what's the first thing you would spend it on?
First thing I would spend it on is I would probably, I joined that mastermind and I don't regret it, but it wasn't quite a fit. I would first spend it on probably a little bit of mentorship. Like that, the reason I didn't love that mastermind, it's great, but it's huge. It's you're just a number basically. They try their best to not make it like that. But
Small cog in a big wheel.
yeah, so I'd love to be in just a group of 10 to 20 guys all over the country basically who are, doing bigger commercial deals, storage, multifamily, stuff like that, and spend the 50 grand a year to be in Ken's mastermind, to be in Mark Evans, you know, mastermind, and then just listen to what they tell me.
Good advice either way, for sure. Speaking of advice, what advice would you give to newer investors or seasoned investors going forward?
Yeah, and this was really speaking to me when Nick was talking about, hiring people. No one cares about your project more than you. Um, and I've, it's funny because when I got started out, oh, the project takes an extra 2 months. Say, great, the market's gone up. The tides have completely shifted, and you need to set the precedent with the people who are working for you. That, you know, I care about you. I care about your work. I care about your budget, your timeline, all that stuff. Like you need to, I'm really good at just being, oh, la di da di da. No, this is the time to be on it and babysit, and let the people know that, hey, I care. You are replaceable. So perform. It's there's no other things about it. It's funny because I'm starting to see this too. Like I had a guy call me up, contractor. Hey man, you just got laid off. You got any work? I've never gotten that call before. And then I'm on Facebook Marketplace looking for stuff. Um, Excavation. I have an excavation business. I'm looking for work. I got a foundation business. I'm looking for work. What are those? Those are the first two parts in new builds that people are starting to get squeezed. So people are replaceable. There's people who are going to be giving better prices. And that all comes down to, people who were just along for the ride and saying, oh, Justin doesn't care. We'll get it done when we get it done. It's like, no, it matters. And I care.
Cool. Nick, any final thoughts before we wrap everything up?
No, man, I just appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. And even though you're a young kid, you got a lot of wisdom. So I appreciate you and everything that you're doing for us.
We call him a prodigy around here.
Whatever.
You're not a young kid anymore, aren't you? Are you 30 yet?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
No. You're a young kid. You're what? I'm 24.
Okay.
Still,
Sorry.
That's dumb. Don't ever do that again, Nick.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been messing with the media today. Hey, how did you like that intro, by the way, where you just came in and we just went? We've never done that before.
I liked it. I was caught off guard. I thought we were gonna, have a little pre-chat, but
This is the prelude to the actual podcast. We're going to stop this recording and we're going to record the actual podcast when we're done.
okay, perfect. Oh, we forgot to press record.
Yeah, this was just the intro to get you.
Yeah. No, Justin, this has been great, by the way. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you or follow you on social media or potentially get involved with your projects if you're looking for additional funding or partners?
Yeah, Justin James Live on Instagram, Facebook. Facebook's still more music stuff. Come out to a show. I'm not playing a whole lot, but when I do, that's part of keeping it fun. If you don't do it all the time, it's more fun when you do. So, but yeah, reach out to me there, and love to connect, have a conversation. I never turn down the first invite. You never know where it's going to go.
Right, absolutely.
Perfect. All right, thank you so much, Justin. Everyone loves you. Have a great time. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.